Good afternoon. This is Councilmember Shepherd. I am the chair of the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee. And today we'll be having a public hearing and work session on amendments to public property vending code related to the operation of food trucks. So we are having this work session today at 2 o'clock. We'll officially call the meeting to order. Ms. Lindo, could you please make the public meeting statement, please?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. Today's Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee public hearing and work session on food truck vending will be conducted remotely as advertised and in accordance with Georgia Code Section 50-14-1. The public is able to submit their comments via voicemail at 404-330-6092 yesterday between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. These comments will be played during the public comment portion of this meeting. The public may access the meeting conference bridge toll-free by dialing 877-579-6743 and entering conference ID number 831-599-1256. This information was also posted in a public notice that was published on the City Council webpage at citycouncil.atlanta.ga.gov and shared via communication distributed on Monday, March 8, 2021. The public may also view the meeting on Channel 26, the Council's homepage at citycouncil.atlanta.ga.gov, Facebook and Twitter pages at ATL Council, and the Council's YouTube channel. Today's presentation is available on the Atlanta City Council website on the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee presentations page. All persons present on this meeting conference bridge are requested to please mute your phones and speakers. Meeting participants wishing to speak must be acknowledged by the committee chair. Thank you all in advance for your cooperation.
Thank you, Ms. Lindo. I want to step back a minute. What I didn't do was introduce my colleagues on council and also give me a list of the department heads who are here. So, Ms. Lindo, do we have a list of who our council members are who are present?
Madam Chair, currently I've been informed that Council Member Smith is the only one that is signed in thus far.
Okay. We will proceed. This is not where we have to require a quorum. This is a work session. So, and can you also give me a list of the departments who are here representing different various departments?
Yes, Madam Chair. We have Commissioner John Dargle to respond to inquiries regarding the Parks and Recreation. We have from Finance, Marlene Jackson, the Revenue Director, and members of her staff. We have with us from the Fulton County Board of Health, Galen Baxter. He's the District Environmental Health Director. And we have from DeKalb County Board of Health, Marcus Johns. He's the Environmental Health Department Manager. We also have a representative from the Atlanta Food Coalition, Mr. Jim Shumaki, who's the president, and the members of the Food Truck Association of Georgia on the line, Mr. Tony Harrison, the president of the board of directors, and several members from the board. We also have Atlanta Police Department Major William Ricker, who is the code enforcement and enforces violations related to food trucks.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Smith, and all the folks from various departments. Thank you all for coming today. We now will go to public comment. Ms. Lindo, could you please sound the public comments, please?
One moment, Madam Chair.
Good evening. My name is Kirk Fisher. I'm at 925 Garrett Street Southeast, unit number 214. And identically, both my wife and I support a food truck program in the Glenwood Avenue subdivision, as well as virtually any place else. I think food trucks provide a great alternative, particularly in this day and age, to walk-in restaurants, although we will continue to support those as much as we can. And I would like to see food truck programs extended. My number is 614-599-5610, and thanks for taking my comments.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Moore, and I live at 477B Bartram Street, Atlanta, Georgia, 30316. I am calling to share my support for the food truck program. I think that they are excellent incubators for entrepreneurs. I also think they're important 3316. Thank you for opening this up for comments. And I wanted to always pledge my support for the food truck program, as I think it's an excellent way to support our restaurant entrepreneurs in Atlanta and provide kind of an ecosystem for them to either get back on their feet or move forward to opening a retail location. I think that part has been hardest hit, and it's important for us as a city to support them. I also think it's very important for our communities. I know we've had food trucks in our neighborhoods where it has allowed this kind of community togetherness while social distancing. So particularly in these times, I think that this is an important measure to support. Thank you for listening.
Hey, this is Julie Stewart. We're calling in support of the food truck program. Thank you. Hi, my name is Melissa Sutterfield, and I live at 495 Hamilton Street Southeast, Atlanta, Georgia, 30316 in the Glenwood Park neighborhood. And I am just leaving my comment of the fact that I'm really highly enjoying the ability to walk to a food truck in my neighborhood and be able to, have multiple different opportunities come to me versus me going out into public. So I'm a big fan and would love to see this program continue. You can reach me at 404-374-3735. Thank you.
I'm Ultra Food Truck and Cousins Maine Lobster, and I just want to voice my support for the right-of-way food truck program. Food truckers are always looking for new vending opportunities, and of course, these have been tough times with COVID. But this is a program that will benefit our industry as well as the community in providing more food options in downtown Atlanta. And I think it's the right program at the right time. And thank you for your consideration. But we support it. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Erica Hatgold, and I live at 473 Parkland Street in Atlanta, Georgia, 30316. I'm calling to leave a message to let you know that I am in support of the food trucks, and it is entrepreneurial spirit like this that we need throughout our city. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Tiffany Goins at 448 Bill Kennedy Way, Atlanta, Georgia. I do support the food truck program. Thank you.
Greetings to your conveners and attendees of the Public Safety Work Session on amending our city's public property vending code via Ordinance 20-0-1696. Ben Howard, Senior Advocate, Public Policy Advocate. The last whereas clause in this legislation reads, whereas an administrative process will provide greater flexibility, transparency, efficiency, and community engagement in the designation of new on-street right-of-way food truck areas. The words transparency, efficiency, and community engagement really should have been enough for the Mpu 9 to have placed this ordinance on the agenda of the March 3rd Neighborhood Planning Unit R meeting. The following words, which appear in the caption, should also have been an improvement for allowing discussion of this matter by citizens along the Templeton Road and Cascade Road corridors. Quote, to promote opportunities for small businesses and increase food access for underserved areas of the city, unquote. Ignoring words and phrases like these shows one's true colors. So show us your colors, Mpu 9. Just when will you ever stand up and speak out in behalf of those less fortunate among the 20,000 stakeholders and residents of Neighborhood Planning Unit R? Or will you forever be on the side of those who want to build housing units in excess of $300,000 and on the side of those who want to end affordable housing units for seniors in Greenbrier? And for those who want to set up private schools in NPUR without proper vetting by parents and grandparents. Shape up or ship out, please. Vice Chair Anthony Robinson, Carlos Clare, Ricardo Jacobs, Albert White, Renette Scott, Allison Hathaway, Sherry Williams, and Mpu Outreach cohorts and supporters. Bye-bye.
I just wanted to say that I'm in full support of the food truck program, especially in the pandemic. I think it's much needed. When people can't go inside, we love brick and mortar, but we can't be inside and eating. And then especially these urban neighborhoods where we want to see our neighbors and hang out, to have a food truck come to the neighborhood where we can all socially distance. It's such a great opportunity for people to get together safely. So I definitely support the food truck program. Yes, for me. My name is Penny Bean, and I live in Glenwood Park.
Tiffany Smith, 958 Glenwood Park Drive, Southeast Atlanta, 30316. Strongly support food truck vendors on public property. It brings a great sense of community. It gives dining options outside. It adds diversity to the food scene. And it also provides food truck accessibility to neighborhoods that may not have as many options. Strongly support. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kurt Chikowski, and I own Big C Chicago Kitchen Food Truck. My home address is 201 Brooklyn Lane in Roswell, Georgia. My commissary address is in Sandy Springs. I'm calling to let you know that I'm in full support of the City of Atlanta Food Truck Public Right-of-Way program. Food truck owners are entrepreneurs with a passion for culinary excitement, and we can help make Georgia, make Atlanta a world-class food destination. Food trucks can also help assisting in growing in underdeveloped areas of the city. And we consistently hear from customers that they would like to have more access to food trucks. I'm a small business owner, and I've been hurt really hard by COVID, and I desperately need new vending opportunities for my business to survive. This program will help the food truck industry thrive in the City of Atlanta. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Hi, my name is Archana Becker. I own Bodonic Food Truck in the City of Atlanta. My address is 739 Lambert Drive Northeast, Atlanta, Georgia, 30324. I just wanted to give a suggestion. I am a restaurant owner as well, so I totally understand that trucks should be really far away from restaurants that are trying to serve people. But my suggestion, which we did in COVID with people in neighborhoods, would do a private event in their driveway, but people would pre-order their meals. But I thought it would be a good idea if you did it in public parks, so you're not competing with restaurants, and the neighbor near the park could help manage it for timelines, and they just have to have all their permits and their licenses, and people can get inspected on those locations as spots, checked for fire or for health. So that way, the neighbors have something in it to make sure that everybody cleans up and does what they're supposed to, nobody's competing with restaurants. And I think that would be a win-win, because that way, we get more taxes, we're keeping people outside, it's safer, not all inside. It's a good community event, but it's outside when we open up. And I think it'd be a great way to do it. And it's walking only, so there's no danger of accidents in the middle of a busy street. I would be happy to answer any questions or be of any help. You can call me at 404-386-1940. I appreciate your time, and hopefully something will be done. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, my name is Daniel New, Director of Advocacy for the Georgia Restaurant Association, here to comment about food trucks during the public work session. The Georgia Restaurant Association represents all the eating and drinking establishments across the state. Due to the pandemic, we approximate that 20% of the almost 19,000 restaurants have closed for good and estimate a loss of $5 billion in revenue statewide. Majority of the businesses hurt during the pandemic, where restaurants are dependent on in-person dining. The GRA has supported food trucks from the beginning. We petitioned Georgia to adopt the food code rules that regulate food trucks, thus legitimizing their business and creating an equal playing field for all. Prior to this, food trucks could only conduct business through variances. The GRA will continue to support food trucks provided they continue to follow the regulations under the Georgia Food Code. Additionally, we request that there be a 200-feet buffer between their businesses and properly licensed food service establishments, similar to what the city of Savannah has codified. On average, a brick-and-mortar restaurant pays more than $75,000 in permits, taxes, and fees, compared to the considerably less fees a food truck pays. The 200-feet buffer will help keep everyone on a fair playing field and ensure that restaurants who have been hit the worst by the pandemic have a fighting chance, and everyone can continue to push towards a brighter future in serving the community and their employees. If you have any questions, I can be reached at 404-467-9000. Thank you for letting me speak.
Hello, my name is Jeff Wheeler, and I'm Five Finger Philly food truck. I'm located in Atlanta. I'm in full support of the City of Atlanta Food Truck Public Right-of-Way Program. I'm a small business owner, and I desperately need new vending opportunities for my business to survive. This program will help the food truck industry thrive in the City of Atlanta. Good day.
Hi, my name is Kevin Rosenberg. My address is 945 Benson Street, Southeast, 30316. Calling to support to express my support for food trucks in Atlanta.
Hi there, my name is Jasmine, last name is Beck, ACK. I live at 3085 Colbert Drive, Decatur, Georgia, 30023. I wanted to call and show support for the city ordinance to allow food trucks to park in the downtown area. The more opportunities we have as food truck operators and owners, the more we can stay in business. I've been in business for 3 years, and none of the food trucks that have opened with me are still in business. To be honest, it's a very, very, very difficult career choice, especially in the city of Atlanta. Anything you guys can do to help would be greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for your effort and for what you do. Hope you have a great day.
Yes, my name is Stephen Lee. I live at 958 Glenwood Park Drive, Southeast Atlanta, Georgia, 30316. I'm just calling to leave a message to leave my huge support for the food truck program. We do have a food truck that does come to our community once a month, and it is one of the favorite programs of the entire community. But personally, for myself, I love the idea. It just really fosters a good community in the neighborhood and really brings neighbors together. Plus, provides really introduction to really tasty food that we would order and help support local businesses as well. So I understand that there may be some legislation that's up for discussion, but just quickly from this voter, I'm a huge supporter of the food truck program. Thank you very much. My phone number is to reach me at 646-765-0191. Thank you.
Ms. Lindo, is that it?
Madam Chair, that concludes the public comment.
Thank you. We'll now move to item number 4, and we'll ask Commissioner King to come forward from the Plan Department to talk about our overview of the food truck vending program. Commissioner King, are you there?
Yes, Madam Chair. This is Tim Keene with the Department of City Planning. Thank you, and all the council members who joined us to discuss this topic. Madam Chair, you'll remember we initially brought a piece of legislation related to food trucks to the Public Safety Committee in November of last year, and there was some discussion among the committee members about food trucks and the legislation that we were proposing. A request of the committee, of course, was to have this work session, but also for us to spend some time in the community and specifically with the NPUs to present the proposed legislation and bring a refined version of it back to the Public Safety Committee and hold this work session before we come to the committee for a vote. So since the end of November, when we last were with the committee, we have done that and went to each of the NPUs at the beginning of this year and worked through some changes as a result of what residents of the city have suggested, as well as those that result from continued discussion with the industry and businesses. And so, Madam Chair, what I'll do is, if it's okay with you, I'll hand it off to Josh Humphreys, who will go through a brief presentation on where we stand with the legislation that hopefully will facilitate some discussion among the committee members. You'll remember that the current regulations around food trucks in the city are very restrictive. And in order to operate a food truck within the public right-of-way, there's a small area of downtown Atlanta where you're permitted to do that. And what Josh will go through is a proposal to expand the ability for food trucks to work. And this relates specifically and only to within the public right-of-way. And we'd like to expand the ability for food trucks to work within the public right-of-way to other areas of the city. And Josh, if you're here, you could go through the slides for the committee members.
All right, thanks so much, Tim and Madam Chair, and everyone else for joining us today to talk through this. So I'll walk through briefly this presentation. It covers kind of the origin of working on this food truck ordinance and kind of why we're looking to expand the program. Talk through a little bit of what it is and what it isn't, and then some of the feedback that we got from our MPUs and how that played a role in helping us get where we are today. So on slide 2, we'll start there with just a bit of background. So in 2013, the city created its first right-of-way food truck program, and this was in an area called Government Walk downtown. This is near City Hall and kind of the Fulton County government buildings area. There were some challenges kind of even prior to COVID for this area, just, limited pedestrian traffic, especially after hours, since it was limited just to this area of downtown where there aren't a ton of residents that live. COVID made this all worse with City Hall and these other government buildings being shut down and really limited kind of food truck opportunities and kind of needs, around outdoor dining and others that rose up during COVID. On slide 3, just kind of general community benefits for food trucks and why we think that expanding them and giving them more flexibility in the city is important. City of Atlanta's had a limited program since 2013, but food truck activity across the metro area and in a lot of other comparable cities has risen significantly in recent years. And food trucks, particularly, I think there are quite a few benefits to them and kind of the role they play in creating a thriving city and a thriving economy. One is the enhancement of the streets and pedestrian access, and kind of by focusing this particular ordinance on the right-of-way, that it has a potential to improve the pedestrian experience and public realm of the city. Also to activate underutilized public space that exists in the city, and to increase economic opportunity for our entrepreneurs and food truck businesses to use the public right-of-way and create economic activity in the public realm. And then also to provide options for underserved neighborhoods that may not have the economic market to sustain brick and mortars, that food trucks can often play a kind of an important role in creating economic activity and fresh food, prepared food access in areas that don't have a lot of brick and mortar businesses as well. On slide 4, you'll see a couple of cities that we worked with, and kind of as we were working through options for right-of-way vending, Boston and then also Columbus, Ohio, that have the right-of-way food truck programs throughout their cities. So on slide 5, we'll talk through what the ordinance does. So this ordinance would authorize the Department of City Planning to manage a process to designate food trucks on on-street public right-of-way locations within commercial districts throughout the city. The new locations will be designated through a community-driven application process managed by the department. They're located within or adjacent to commercial districts in the city. So this would not be in single-family or two-family zoned areas, but in commercial areas of the city. And they would be identified by food truck only parking signage where these locations are created. Food trucks will be permitted to operate from these locations under the existing process. So the government walk program that's existed since 2013 has a permitting process as part of that already exists. And so that process doesn't need to be created again. This would just expand the locations that would be eligible for the food trucks to operate from. And then one thing that's new that we've added since the last time we were at committee, and I can talk through a bit, is that food trucks will be required to utilize an online software platform to reserve locations in advance. We heard a lot of feedback from food truck operators and from residents that the ability to provide predictability and planning at the locations with a reservation software is important. And so the platform also from an enforceability standpoint, whether from its public health or a code enforcement related standpoint, that this will have real-time tracking of which trucks are located at which locations. And so it creates a lot more predictability and I think a better opportunity for economic success for the businesses that are operating there by having this reservation system for the locations. So on the next slide, what the ordinance doesn't do. So the ordinance doesn't change the process for how food trucks operate on private property. On private property. So there's a private property vending program. You can get permitted to do that. This does not impact that or change the way that process currently works. It only impacts where food trucks can't operate within the public right-of-way. It also does not, as I mentioned, change the permitting process for food trucks that already exist in the current government walk program. On the next slide, so the designation process, the way that we've designed the program and working through is that there would be an application for review, and so that a commercial district could apply and say, hey, we want a food truck location here. That review would come to our office, and we would review kind of the set criteria, working with ATL DOT and others that need to be a part of that process to review, does it meet the criteria, the requirements of to be eligible. We decided that, we review it, it fits that criteria, and there will be a public notice period. And then after the public notice period, then it would be, planning commissioner could approve the creation of a new location, and then we would construct signage to designate that location as a food truck area. Next slide, slide 8. In program development, we work really closely with food truck operators and both the Street Food Coalition and the Food Truck Association of Georgia, as well as business associations and CIDs, to ensure that as the program that we developed was a program that worked both for the food truck operators, well for the public realm, and then for the businesses and business districts that these would be operating in. And here's a few of the organizations that gave us letters of support and really played a huge role in shaping this ordinance and where we are today. We also work closely with ATL DOT, law, finance, APD license permit unit, and then the county boards of health as we work through all the details on it. So on the next slide, so our Mpu Outreach, we went in January of this year to all 25 MPUs for review and comment. And so some of the core things that we got in that review and comment period: community input on location. So as we do applications and really kind of engaging residents and those nearby on the application process, and really kind of having it be an application process versus us just putting locations out there, we think will kind of drive support around these ideas. Location management, and this comes back to the electronic reservation system that I mentioned, that creating, requiring this reservation process will create more predictability. And then it will also have an interactive map that'll show where the food trucks are operating in real time. So you can know if there's a food truck operating at the food truck location near you. On enforcement, the online reservation software also helps with enforcement, both Board of Health and for APE license permits. They'll have access to real-time and historic data of which food truck reserved a location on what day. And then eligible areas, the food trucks will only be designated on-street public right-of-way, and then they will not be eligible in single-family or two-family zoned areas, as I mentioned. And then the last slide is my information, and so that's all I have. I'd be happy to take any questions, Madam Chair, that you or anyone else has about the presentation.
Thank you. I do have a few questions. So I'm going to go back. I'm trying to find the slide where you all talked about a process. So the application process on slide number 7. The applicant applies to request the area in the right-of-way street is designated for food trucks. And once they apply, we've already identified, obviously, by then, where the food trucks are going to be. Where food trucks, again, you said you all will have a food truck designated area. There will be a sign that will say that you can actually have a food truck in this particular commercial area. Is that correct? So through that process, if that's there, applicants will be able to actually apply, or they can go online with the city and see where the food trucks areas are and apply. Is that correct?
That is correct, and it's a good point of clarity. So it won't be like an entire block or district. It'll just be a few, let's say 2 or 3 parking spaces, and say, hey, this is a food truck area, these hours of the day, these days of the week, that this is a food truck location where food trucks can operate from. So it'll be a lot more restricted than say, hey, this entire neighborhood or this entire commercial district, but it would be very specific parts of it that would be designated.
So let me go back and ask. Again, I see where through the MPU process, and I know some of the MPUs I was in, people were very concerned about how do we get engaged in terms of where these food trucks would be. So who will make a decision as to where the food trucks would be in terms of these commercial areas? You all, the planning department would, obviously, right?
Well, so it will start with an application process. So let's say, a given business association just, applies for a location at a specific spot. And then once the city receives that or our office receives that, then we would work with them on kind of getting a location that would work for that and be kind of a part of reviewing that. And I think one of our goals is working with them to find a location in a given district that works best and has support. And so I think that's really where our goal is, and kind of the way this would work is that it would be community driven and that someone applies from the particular district. And then we would work with them to find a location there that would fit the requirements of this.
So for instance, if I'm at the corner of Deal and Metropolitan Parkway and there's a space there that I want to put a food truck, then I would actually submit something to you all via application. You all would then actually look at that location and determine, okay, that may be a fit. Then let me make sure I understand the process. Then you also have to I see somewhere where you have to put a public notice period up, where if you all approve this and review the process and the location, then you will put a public notice up. Is that correct?
Yeah, there'd be I believe it's a 14-day public notice period at that location once it's been tentatively approved.
Will it go through the MPU for approval?
No, it would not go to MPU for approval.
So right now, one of the things I heard is, how would the community know where these food truck places are going to be? Are they going to be engaged at all to know where the food truck places are going to be? Because that was one of the concerns in terms of the neighborhood. How would the neighborhood get engaged in saying, oh, this is where a food truck is going to be? Or is it going to be a point where a food truck vendor put in an application, they go to the city for a review process with a proposed location, then you all do an assessment of it. If the planning department agrees with, okay, this is not a bad location, then you all will put a public notice out there for a X amount of, what did you say, how many days did you say, 14-day period?
That's right.
And then through that process, if people had concerns about it, is that where folks can say, no, I don't agree with this, or they can submit their comments and all of that? How does that work?
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, so during the public notice period, we would receive kind of any feedback that residents may have related to it. And so I guess the different levels of engagement, front end would be kind of who applies, and part of the application, one of the things we're requesting is that folks would include some kind of, what type of outreach they did or support, they garnered kind of within the area for the location, and then they would apply in the public notice period, kind of any additional feedback we got before we would finalize any location.
Okay. So, and then you all will come back and look at the application and the public comment. And then who makes the final decision based on the public comment? How would the community or anybody go back and say, wait a minute, I don't agree with this? Or how did you all just arbitrarily make that decision, the planning department?
Well, yes. I mean, so there's a lot of guardrails on the decision, right, to make sure that it's in a district and kind of so that it's, a lot of the stuff that's already in the ordinance to ensure that what we have is something that, kind of the general framework, right, so that's in a commercial district and it's got X number of distance from, say, a school and otherwise. And so some of that framework is there to kind of, hopefully avoid any kind of situations where it's a bad location. And part of the public comment period and one of our goals and why I think this administrative process hopefully can be helpful is that, we want to find areas in these districts that work best. And so, if one particular area, maybe it technically fits it, but another area makes more sense, I think that's where working kind of through the feedback that we get, finding somewhere that works a little bit better is something that we're committed to do and want to work with. The final decision would be made or kind of final approval would be by Commissioner Keene.
Okay, let me go back to the application at on PowerPoint number 7. The application says applicant must include 3 letters of support from nearby business, property owner, or community-based organization. Who do we define as number 1, property from nearby businesses, letters of support from nearby businesses, property owners, and or business-based organizations. So if I'm an applicant and I decide that I want to park across the street or right on the right of way in front of AutoZone on Deal and Metropolitan, right across from the library. Okay, then I've got to get permission from AutoZone, even though it's not on their private property, but it may be in the right of way of their property. So I have to get a letter of support from them, correct? Property owner and from nearby businesses and community-based organizations. Who are the community-based organizations? Are they the neighborhood association? Are they the NPUs? What do we talk about in that little application process right there? Explain that to me.
Sure. So the requirement or kind of the request for these letters of support really is to show that you've got broad, we want you to engage, with the surrounding area. If you're looking to post a food truck location, they're requesting that, but there would not be so it could not be like a final requirement. The purpose of really working on kind of getting these letters of support and then the public notice period is to notify us if there is a lot of opposition for it, that we want to be able to try and find an amenable solution nearby. And so, it maybe the first exact location isn't a great fit, but, something 100 feet down the road or across the street or around the corner makes more sense. And so all of that feedback helps us with kind of how to find something that has broader support when we do end up in situations where, hey, well, this initial location isn't a great fit. I think that it all helps us with kind of to collect all that information so that we can be most informed and don't end up accidentally putting one in place that does have a lot of opposition.
But I'm not sure if you answered my question. If I did, I'm sorry, I missed it. It says here, applicant must include 3 letters of support from nearby business, property owner, and or community-based organization. So it says must include in the application. Is that correct? That's what you're saying, must include in the application. What does that mean?
So, sure. So this is something that this is actually, I think, a minor change that we need to make with this, because I've been working with law department on this today. That I think that what it'll have to be is that it would be just from kind of a legal standpoint with it, that it would have to be we request them, but we can't require them, to the private property thing that you mentioned, that it would be included similar to like a public comment, within the public notice period, but we can't require it of them. And so we would say, hey, we request this. We want you to engage this as part of kind of a public process for this. But we could not reject it out of hand if they don't include it. So that's something that we'll need to change in this presentation and would not be a part of the administration of it. It's something that we were originally planning to do, but after consultation with law, they've requested we remove.
So I think we should keep it in there. So can you make me understand what the law department is saying why we can't do that? Anybody from the law department here can speak to that?
Josh, could I ask one question?
Sure.
Josh, can you hear me? And Madam Chair, just to get my perspective on it, my understanding, the required letters of support were so that we could see that there is support within the community, and that those letters could come from a business, as Josh said, could come from the neighborhood association, could come from the NPU, but there would be 3 of them. It wouldn't require, however, that in the case you described, Madam Chair, like by the auto parts store, that any particular business, submit a letter of support. So it's not about we want to put one on the street near your business or in front of your business, so you must give us a letter. It was just the idea that when you're submitting an application to get a food truck location, we'd like to see that there's evidence of community support. Generally, but not specific. No one has the right to say, well, I don't want one in front of my business. It's just that we're seeing in the application process that the community has been engaged and that there is some support for this. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, but John, he just said that you're taking that out also.
Yeah, well, I know. I was just trying to give you. Yeah, was trying to clarify the intention, but
yeah, I understand what you're saying. But for me, I also know that even though we're saying this, I can see some scenarios right now in my community where it could become a really serious problem, where you got the AutoZone, case in point. AutoZone at the corner of Deal and Metropolitan Parkway. During the week, on the weekend, they have barbecue people who sell barbecue right in their parking lot, right near the sidewalk. Okay? Now, first of all, let me just say this. The health department is here. I never see anybody from the health department ever come out and ask any of those folks if they have a license to sell food. And I will guarantee you that half these people I'm seeing sell do not have a license by the health department or a certification that they can sell food. So now you got AutoZone, got a tent up on their private property with that. Then you all come out and look and say, in the applicants of the food truck, people say, you know what? Because this particular corner is a very corner that is very attractive to a lot of people. The libraries across the street, a lot of activity. So then you all come out and say, well, I think it's a good place for a food truck. So food truck people say, well, I want to put a food truck out there on the street, right on the other side of the sidewalk where the other folks would sell. And believe me, can I just say this? I've seen it happen already, where they're doing this without even asking for permission. So now we got a food truck that's on the street. We got a tent up in AutoZone where they're selling something else. Now, in addition to AutoZone having people park to go into their store, you got people pulling up to buy food. And the people in the community are calling saying, you got a traffic nightmare on that corner. So now we've created another scenario in terms of that. The way this process is going is we don't have, the community said, well, when did all of that get approved? So the application said, must have a letter of support. I think it should be one. It should be something that's discussed. It should be even discussed with the businesses in terms of the laws, in terms of even on private property. This should be discussed so that we don't have this particular corner to become a corner where you got food trucks, you got trucks then you got tents and people selling food on private property. So now we've made it into a problem area. And so what I'm trying to look at in terms of this particular process is I think it warrants us saying that there should at least be something, a letter of support from the neighborhood that is in there. And I think it's something that should be a flag that should go through the neighborhood, or if we get city doesn't go through the neighborhood, so we have to be the MPU that says, hey, these applicants are actually proposing to put a food truck in there. Because one of the things I heard from neighborhoods and MPUs was that they want to know where a food truck is coming. And I'm just going to say this because we already got food trucks, to be honest with you. Ever since I looked at this, I see food trucks already doing in right of ways with nobody asking them a question or anything. So my question is now is who's going to regulate this? One of the things I've asked is who's going to regulate this? Where's the staff and the capacity to do it? And what happens when it becomes a nightmare? Because a lot of times we give this stuff out in plain is not out there on the weekends when people are doing this. Is the staff going to be out there on the weekends looking at all this stuff? Because that's when a lot of food trucks and people in the evening times and on the weekends, and we typically have this scenario with the city where we open 9 to 5 and then we go home. So who is at home? Who's working in the evening time to look at or on the weekends to see how is this going? Let's sure we're regulating this, because that's when a lot of food trucks are out in the evening time and on the weekends in some of these areas. So not like downtown Atlanta. We're now trying to put it out in neighborhoods where there's commercial areas. So it's a whole different scenario. And I'm not sure if we're tight in terms of how we're going to regulate this and what it's going to bring to the community. Does that make sense what I'm saying to you all?
I'm here, Joyce. This is Councilmember Smith. I'm thinking that the president of the Street Food Coalition is on the phone. His name is Jim Shoemake. I'm thinking there also should be some kind of self-policing, because some of the people that what you're talking about, which I know what you're talking about because I've got them on Moreland and some other streets where it's just kind of a hustle. It's not a professional food truck area set up with legal, with the health department license, making sure they're wearing gloves, making sure they're using all their temperatures and all that are correct. Where you've got kind of and I will admit, sometimes I do stop and buy barbecue though, but kind of the hustle, and then the guys that really make a living off of food trucks. Could y'all let Jim in on the line so he can kind of explain how the street trucks work?
I'm not sure if I don't know how we will let him in. Is he on the list of people that we were talking to earlier, Ms. Lindo? Is he already? Is the Atlanta Food Truck Coalition? Oh yeah, he's there. Jim Shoemake. Jim, is he there? Mr. Shoemake.
I'll have to unmute him.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yay. So thank you for letting me speak. Thank you, Councilmember Smith. So I can answer some of the things that you're talking about, madam. One is that food trucks are regulated to the point where they have to get a series of business license, and they have to get a mobile food vending, which then requires a background check. Then they have to go to the Fulton County Health Department to get their food sales permit to do that. What the barbecue places that you're referring to, yes, they are vending illegally, but what we have done in the past, pre-COVID 2019, the Atlanta Street Food Coalition kind of controlled all of the private street food vending that would happen throughout the city. We actually had the first permitted food truck in your neighborhood right there at Dill and Sylvan Road where the U-Haul place is. And so speaking to that particular location, which is in your neighborhood, is that a lot of the residences were able to come and get affordable food that was fresh, because that was a food desert at the time. I'm not sure if it still is now. But also we had 12th and Peachtree. We had 16 locations through the Atlanta area, and we regulated who had what permits. So the food vendors would have to apply, and once they applied, then they would have to show that they had the proper permits to be vending inside the city. And then we worked hand in hand with Fulton County Food and Safety, so then they could go to our website and see exactly where the food trucks were going to be at that given day to match with their calendar that they have to submit to the health department. So I believe that the City of Atlanta Planning Department is going to team up with a scheduling system similar to that. So then there would be more regulation for health department employees to verify that they're going to be there. And when this happens, it's going to scare people away, because then APD will start issuing out tickets, which is a $1,000 fine if you are vending illegally inside the city. And so with all of these working together, I think it would solve a lot of the problems that your constituents are raising throughout these MPUs. Thank you.
Let me ask a question here.
Well, let me respond to Jim first, caller. Jim, I know when you're talking about the corner of Dill and Sylvan Road. That's where the food trucks vending on private property. They're not in the public right of way. That's at the Tri-Con. And right now, to be honest with you, it's quiet as the kept. And it's not quiet anymore because I'm getting calls every weekend now. Very successful private vending location with about 10 trucks out there or less. I don't know how many on a private location. However, guess what's happening now that I'm actually having to get with the city and do? The traffic is atrocious. That on the back side of that property right now, the people who live in the neighborhood, music is loud. Traffic on the weekend is to the point that the people who live on the back side can't even find a place to park on the street. They're double parking on both sides of the street. So now it's become a place where it's not just a strictly commercial area. It's now encroaching on residents in their neighborhood where they can't even park on their street. There are people getting out, parking in front of their yards on both sides, dropping trash, doing all kinds of stuff. And so now people in the neighborhood are calling me on the weekends and saying, council member, we have to call the police department and say, council member, the traffic and the noise is just too much. And so and they've been out there now for about a year or so, but now as they're becoming more successful, it is becoming a headache for some people, some of my legacy folks who live in the community, who lived there for years. Or a couple of weeks ago, I got a call from this one particular resident all day long with the major saying, please go out down there and quiet them down. And what about all the traffic? So I hear what you all are saying in terms of that. And the questions I'm asking are questions relevant to that, because as we make these decisions, we've got to also let the people in the neighborhood know this is what's going on. And are you all okay with these particular locations? And so that's all I'm saying in terms of the locations of where who's making these decisions. When is the community going to say it'll pop up? And then the community says, well, my God, did anybody look at that? And sometimes, unfortunately, I'm just going to be real with you all. Sometimes when people make decisions about that in terms of city and downtown, sometimes they don't look at it. They don't come out on the weekend and look at it. They just may come out there during the week when everything is slow and quiet and easy. Oh, this is a great location. Oh, okay. They don't come out during the weekends when the stuff is really out there, hustle and bustling, all of that. Food trucks, I support food trucks. I go to them. But at the same time, I want to make sure that it's regulated in a way that it's not causing a problem. So I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody yet answer my questions, and I'm a little concerned about how this application process is. So I'm saying we may have to tweak this.
I think that what you're referring to with that particular private street vending, the planning department would know if there is a SPU allowance on that piece of property, which I really doubt that there is. So as your residents are doing, they should call the police, and there should be, like, obviously they're not following noise ordinances, and whoever is is in charge of that event is obviously not following any regulations. And that's a factual and very serious complaints that your neighbor's having. I wouldn't want to have that in my home in East Atlanta. Even the bars that are very near my house, after a certain time, do not play music out on the patios. So I totally understand that. I just think that there should be better regulation, and on the weekends, I do agree with you on that. but I wouldn't say that the only argument I would have is that the food truck permitting application needs to be enforced, and this program, I think, would help resolve that, because then there would be more oversight and more regulation on what's happening.
Madam Chair, if I may, on to Jim's point. So one thing that I think that is very different about the situation that you're referencing, and one thing that I actually am excited about for this program to give a level of oversight and regulation and enforcement that we have not historically been able to do for any public vending related thing, and that's the electronic reservation system. So this system will require that, and if a food truck violates it, they will lose their permit. And so it gives us a lot of ability to say, hey, if you're a bad operator, if you don't clean up after your trash, if you have noise violations, we know exactly which food truck was at X location on a given day and a given time, because they reserve that location. So whether no matter what the enforcement related element to it is, we actually have real-time information about who was there, who reserved it, and who was in violation, whether it was a noise violation, a trash violation, otherwise. So if we have someone who's a bad actor, then we have ability to really track that in a way that we've never been able to do before. And I think that's what makes this program a lot different than other ones that we've looked at doing in the past, and even the existing government walk one. The other thing that I think is important about all of that is, and Jim mentioned this a bit, is there's a pretty rigorous process to get permitted for these. So this, it's whether it's working with Board of Health to get your food permits, but also you have to do background checks with APD. You have to go through the full like kind of check process in order to get to the point of even being a permitted food truck. And if you don't go through that process and you vend here, then we can do enforcement on that because you're outside of the system that we have in place. So I think the reservation system that we built here was really designed to do that. In other cities like Columbus, Ohio, for instance, that uses a very similar reservation system that we spent a lot of time talking with, the introduction of that system was really a game changer for them. So then they knew who their bad actors were, and they could have a direct kind of impact on that rather than punishing the whole system because you've had a couple of bad actors. And so that's one safeguard that we put in here that I think is an important part of making this whole program work better.
All right, let me ask something real quick. Okay, and Joyce is right. We get phone calls about a truck or a T-shirt vendor or whatever on some of our streets. So if Joyce or I get a call and they say, there's a vendor or a whatever, a food truck or whatever up at such and such corner, and they're either on private property or on a vacant piece of property or something, how can I walk up to the food truck and look at the food truck or the barbecue pit or whatever and say, and just be able to eyeball without going on this electronic system, how can I know that they have a health permit, or how can I look at it? Is there a visual way that just a regular person can look and see if they're legal?
Yes, ma'am. I can answer that for you if you don't mind, Joshua. So just like restaurants have to have their permit and their license posted where the consumer can see it. So every food truck that does have a legit permit should have that permit up on the window that you're ordering from. So you should just be able to walk right up and see that 2021 Atlanta food safety permit.
And that's
if they don't have that permit, then they're probably vending illegally.
City?
It's the Fulton County Health Department and the City of Atlanta business license is usually what they have.
So they're looking for two things then.
Caller, can I jump back in right quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like me and you going back and forth. I guess we're the only ones on. But let me just say this and turn to my point. I want y'all to understand, Mr. Shoemaker, I am not opposing this food truck vending at all and expanding it into our community. So let me make sure I make y'all understand this. What I am concerned about is I want us to come up with a process that will actually regulate this in a way that there's accountability. That's what I'm concerned about. So I'm not pushing against this food truck vending program, expanding it out into our communities at all. Here's my concern that I'm going to tell you. Here's my concern is what I'm going to tell you is that I am not confident at this point that where we are in the city of Atlanta is that we have staff and that we have a process that is validated that is going to regulate this. And so I've got other questions to ask that I don't think, Mr. Shoemaker, you can answer in terms of this. I want to make sure that before we roll this program out, that everything is tight in terms of it. And when y'all talk about Columbus and other other cities, different cities have different regulations, different cultures, different all this stuff. So I'm not saying I'm not going to support this, but what I am saying is I have still got some thoughts and concerns about process and procedures to make sure this is going to be right. Great idea, beautiful idea, and I want it. But my concern still is to yet, and you all have not been able to help me with this, and I'm not sure if that's going to happen today. So I think we'll have to get back together and go back over this again. I may have to have some sidebar conversations about this. But I'm not sure if we're there yet in terms of making sure that this process is one that is going to be applicable, that when we finish, is that there is no craziness in the community. That's all the things. I'm giving you scenarios on that. I do also have someone from Fulton County here, Mr. Galen Baxter from the Fulton County Department Board of Health, and I think he wants to make a couple of statements too. So can we hear from him, Mr. Baxter?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon. Yeah, thank you for letting me speak really quickly. All I wanted to do was kind of circle back to something you said earlier about the illegal food vendors. So if anyone becomes aware of any illegal food vendors anywhere, or if you have a question about whether or not they're permitted and you can't see their permit, you can always call us or email me, and we can look it up in our system. And if they are an illegal vendor, then we need to know, like when and where they're vending, so we can go out and do a complaint investigation.
Now, when does your staff work?
Typically, we work Monday through Friday, but we do work on the weekends as well, and we do work after hours, just depending on the needs and what's going on.
And how is it that we don't have anything in our process to know to contact you or your information? Because I think that's a fallacy on our part and y'all part too, is that we don't have any process of knowing how to report this out and who to contact it to, who to reach out to. So you do most definitely to give us that information. But I still would like to say that typically most of these departments that y'all are talking about, they are 9 to 5 during the week. And they're like, oh, okay, well, just call us and we'll go back out and check it. But if you're not working at night on the weekends, how do you do that? So I'd be interested to see that, because I think that's what's happening internally with the city of Atlanta and a lot of these departments. Is some of the stuff that we're trying to regulate, it's not something that's going to be regulated doing 9 to 5 every day. It is on weekends and in the evening times. And so we need to be looking at how we're going to restructure our departments when the complaints are coming in and we have people actually going out and looking at it at that time. But thank you, Mr. Baxter. I do want to get your information.
Yes, ma'am. No problem. Thank you.
Paula, did you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, this is going to take a minute before we're going to be able to have everyone legal. And I think one of the things that we should probably do is, instead of just telling like the hustle guy on Saturday that pulled up at the convenience store parking lot, instead of just trying to get them in a lot of trouble, there should probably be somebody in the city, because we've got all these programs to help women and different various people get, own their own business. I think we need to try to get them in a way that they can be legal, and then if they can sign up on the electronic system to go to be in a legal place instead of at the convenience store or wherever next to the tennis shoe people and the t-shirt people, then it will give the neighborhood more of a sense of control.
Well, what we're doing, Ms. Smith, you're asking the vendors to regulate themselves. And I'm not saying that these food truck folks, I really like what Mr. Shoemaker said in terms of how food truck vendors are much more in a structure where there's more accountability in terms of they have to get all these licenses, these permits, and doing all this different stuff. And so, to be honest with you, I'm not sure if the food truck people are the people that I'm just really bashing, but I do see some possible issues here if we start saying, we'll put a food truck over there and put a food truck right here, and then as we go out there, nobody's regulating the other part. And then as we look at all of this in terms of what what he was saying also was that Mr. Shoemaker was saying was that the SUP is a special use permit in terms of all of this. I'm going to say what I just said to the gentleman just now is that in the city of Atlanta, we don't have a structure of accountability for all of these people who is going to be going out and giving citations and doing this. Who is that going to be? Right now, if we talk about the police department, we're short in the police department right now in terms of this, and police department literally only react to emergency and crimes. So who in our departments is going to be regulating these people? And so for me, caller, I just want you to understand as me one-on-one to you as a colleague is that as we're looking at rolling out these programs, we've got to ask all these questions that are very much involved in terms of us having the best ideas. And this is the greatest thing that's going to happen to us is to extending support, but we also got to regulate it. And that's the problem we're having now, even in terms of clubs and bars and all these other things that are happening in terms of all of this. And I just also heard from a gentleman who was with the Restaurant Association to talk about buffers around where they're going to put them to make sure there's some accountability in terms of that. These are valid questions that we need to be looking at to make sure that there are some regulations around them. So I think that where we're at the beginning of saying, let's make sure we do this. I want to do this. I'm just saying that we've got to come back and talk about what is the structure of accountability in terms of all of this. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. This electronic system, is there going to be like a web page where we could, because for me, we've got to make it simple so that we can it would be really great if they had a web page where it would like map out where all the legal food trucks were for that weekend. And then if they weren't on that map, then we would know that the one at the corner store is not legal or, I don't know.
Councilmember Smith, just on that briefly, yeah, it will be that. It will be an interactive web page with real-time live, who's reserved where all of the eligible locations are in the city at a given time, which one's booked, and it'll have future bookings, historic data, both for restaurant advertisement, right? The food trucks can then advertise, hey, this will help that, folks know where they are and be available to digital customers, but it'll help as well from the enforcement side, so that we know, who is where, and if there's a complaint, we'll know which food truck was operating at that location.
So, Mr. Humphrey, can I ask a follow-up question to that? Are you saying that at some point, once we actually pull this up and it's working and we do come up with a process to make sure that everybody's okay where these spaces are, these are going to be designated spaces that's going to be permanent. And any other spaces other than that, you can't go in every week and say arbitrarily, I don't want to be down in that corner. I want to be somewhere else. So I'm going to actually put in an application to go down the street a little farther. Are we going to at some point have a defined mapping system that says, here is where food trucks can be?
Yes, there'll be like once the locations are established, that will be a location, and it'll be discrete, right? It'll only be, let's say it's 3 parking spots on one block. It won't be kind of the whole block, and you can go anywhere on the block you want to go. But like these 3 spots and this one food truck is reserved this for the day, and that'll all be a part of the way that you can do this.
So once we come up with a process of saying, here's where the food truck is going to be, and I think we're still going to have to come back and figure that out. But once we do that, we can say, then there's going to be a map that will be created for even applicants to go online or food trucks to go online and says, oh, wow, I want to go over here on next weekend. And then as we talk about that, how are we going to get in line to say, is that food truck going to be there all the time, or when will somebody else have an opportunity to do it in terms of just like some other stuff in terms of how do you get on the waiting list if you want that spot, you can't get it. But how do we do that? But that's a whole nother. So I think we're going in the right directions. I'm not opposed to any of this. I just want to make sure that there's a process that's thoroughly vetted that is going to be looking at a balance of communities in terms of where they're going to be. The community knows where these food trucks are going to be categorically. And then even after that, an application process of how you apply, and then a notification go up and all this other stuff. And then once that's done, you can look at the map. I can look at it. Somebody can look at it and says, okay, these are where all the food trucks are all over the city. And I can go over there and I can even maybe look at and say, okay, Shea Brother and Jones are going to be, that's one of my food trucks in my community, and they're all over the place. But they're going to be on this corner right now at this particular place. So because they're a great food truck in my community, and they don't do it on public right away. They pretty much stay on private property. But just in terms of how that happens, these are the things I think we're going in the right direction. I just want to make sure that we are really structurally in a way where it's not going to cause confusion in the community, more accountability, just like I just heard from the guy from Fulton County Health Department. More that when I see this stuff happening, because right now when I see something happen right up the street from me in one of these corners, I'm just like, you got 3 people, even on private property, not on public right of way, where they're vending on private property in a convenience store with everything going on. The parking lot is packed with cars, and they're not buying stuff from the convenience store. They're hanging out the food truck. They're doing car wash. They're doing all of that. And calling right now, we don't have anybody. And then we call the police, and the police come out, and they're reacting. Some of this stuff is not, to me personally, should not be a 911 call. It should be something that somebody in our department, either code enforcement inspectors or whoever these folks are, should be coming out and looking at and regulating on a regular basis. It should not be the police department. We should call them for that. We should have inspectors who are doing this on a regular basis. And so I just want to make sure as we come through this process, that is what we have, so that we're going to create another great program, but there's no structure of accountability. That's all I'm trying to do, guys. So
one comment, if I may, on that I think will be helpful for this is because this is regulated through a kind of a unified system, that violators, when we get complaints about them, the way in which we can do enforcement is that we can, get rid of someone's permit that violates kind of the terms of it. They don't do what they're supposed to do. They're violating kind of whether it's noise or sound or, trash, whatever it is. Then we could pull their permit. Then they don't have access to the program anymore. And there's a level of enforcement there that I think will help. That's a non-APD, kind of like 911 type of emergency. But as we get reports of violators, we could be a part of navigating with that, and I think that'll help make this program work better. And
you know what, Mr. Humphrey, I agree with you. And to be honest with you, I don't think that the problem is actually going to be with the truck vendors. I think that they're going to be much more of a better group to work with than a lot of folks. But I'm saying on the front end of this, as we roll out this program, some of the things that you presented are things where I just need to figure out. We need to create a much more structure of accountability, not from the food truck people, because they're going to be asking, but it's on us as a city to determine, okay, yes, you can do this, you can do that. And then once that happens, I think that you're going to be all right, because I think the food truck process, based on what I've heard, I support them, and they have an accountability process, and we can tag them and go after them. So I'm not even looking at it in terms of going after the food truck people. I just, number one is I want to make sure that we have some kind of way that the community knows where the food truck is going to be in the community. Okay, so if a food truck is a barbecue food truck place, and I have one person who actually does barbecue out of his truck, and it's a real food truck. It's not one of them places where you pull up in a truck and you got a barbecue grill and you out there grilling. This is actually a bona fide food truck. Then if he's there, I can know that on this day, I can go to Johnny Smith's food truck on this street. This is where he's going to be, and I'm all right with that, because I know that where he's going to be is at the corner of whatever, and he's going to be there, or I can figure out where he's going to be. But what I'm saying is, I guess I'm also talking about other folks who are not regulating it. And so I just don't want us to also wind up with a situation where we're having a hodgepodge of different things together. But in terms of this, one of the only things I'm really asking in terms of accountability for this process is that there's a process that the community knows, and this is what my MPUs, 2 of them, has asked. Council member, we just want to have input as to, we know where these food trucks is going to be, and we can nod our head and say, it's okay, we support this. And I think that once we get this done, we're not going to have to come back and go through the MPU process again. It's just us designating where that's going to be and making sure that there's regulations about that. That's the main thing people want to know. Does that make sense?
Madam Chair, if I can, yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, if I can speak, this is Jim Shumick again. I just want to say that I 100% agree with you. I think one of the biggest struggles for me and also the food vendors, the food trucks that work with us are very frustrated when they have to go through all this regulation and then they see, to use Councilwoman Carla-Smith's, like a rogue hustler out there selling who hasn't done any of the verification or paid the thousands of dollars it takes to get permitted in the city of Atlanta. So I 100% am willing to work with you on trying to find a solution to help these unregulated trucks or trailers, smokers. There usually are smokers in the area.
Right. That's all I'm trying to do. I support this program. I'm 100% behind it. I just want to make sure that as we go down this road of looking at this, that we need to be looking at this much more holistically in terms of everything. So I'm not putting the onus of this on food truck vendors, but I'm also letting the departments know we got a bigger problem out there, and that who's going to regulate any of this, and I'm just letting you all know that. So, but I support this program. I just think we need to tweak it a little bit and come back as we tweak it to figure out what we're going to do. But I'm in support of it. And I think one of the things I think we need to come up with a way that it's going to go before, once we designate where the food trucks be across the city, we're not going to have to go back to the neighborhood. We just know that this is where the food truck place is going to be. So that may take a month or two for us to go through, okay, with these applicants, and this is where they want to be. Once we do that, we know where they're going to be. And then we can regulate the food trucks. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think it's going to be the other folks that we now know through this new process. Hey, now community people can say, well, you know, they out there on the streets, and other people, we can also say to them, let's just see this happening, turn this in also. And I just want to make sure there's accountability in terms of that. So I just want y'all to, I'm not trying to push away from any of this. Does that make sense what I'm saying, Mr. Humphrey, Mr. King, everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, yes. Yes, council member, Madam Chair. Yep. And that's the purpose of this meeting, to hear from you. And you've been very clear.
So let's kind of get together. I don't know if we're going to have one-on-ones. We can come back and talk about it in the public safety meeting, some other stuff. But I would like to have some one-on-ones with y'all to kind of have some conversation about some recommendations that we can do to talk about it and kind of go back and forth and see what we can come up with.
Sounds good.
All right. Caller, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, like I said earlier, if we could tell a difference between, we had a way, when we get that call, Joyce, that somebody's up on the corner there and they're, having loud music and all that. If we could open up an app or open up a page on the laptop that says, here's where they are, and that one is illegal, then we can call 911 and have a police officer meet us there, and then we know they're illegal, and then the police officer with us can make them leave.
Okay. I agree.
I want to be able to make it easy for us, because we know that the people that have paid for the food trucks and have gotten all their paperwork, they're the ones that are going to self-police themselves, in that they don't want those other people there either.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's just time for us to tighten up our stuff in the city of Atlanta. So maybe Ohio and some other places are doing it, but we're not good at that yet. I'm just going to tell you the truth. Internal our departments are not good at that. In the county, sometimes y'all not the best at that too, because I need to now know if I see somebody vending on the weekend and I know they're illegal, who do I call? So Mr. Baxter, please send me your information. I want to make sure I get your information so I can start doing that. But I got one last question, though. I see Parks and Recreation is here, and I know that a part of when we was talking about these food trucks vending before, and Mr. Brown is interesting. He's not here right now, but there was this whole discussion around vending in parks. And so is this a part of that, too? Are we even still contemplating that as a part of this legislation, that there will be vending in parks also? Anybody from the Parks Department or anybody will speak to that?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
And I think Commissioner Dargle's here, but this is Tim Keene, and this legislation does not include the parks, so that's a separate issue. And my understanding was that parks did not want to open up, the parks to additional food trucks, but this would not apply to the parks.
So I just want to ask Mr. Commissioner about Dargle's opinion on that as we're talking, and if that's it, we can wrap up after this. Commissioner Dargle, anybody from the Parks Department is here?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Okay. I'm doing well, thank you. As Commissioner Keene said, it doesn't include the park. We have our own permitting process by which vendors, concessionaires, other business opportunities on parkland, we do that through our permitting process. So this particular change in the ordinance would not include parks proper, but it could include the roadways in front of it along the right-of-way.
Okay, so that may be where the park is tied up into it, where we may, Commissioner King, that may be something you're talking about. If there was a place in a park where you want to do food trucks on the outside of the park, would that be the same scenario in terms of zoning? You said commercial areas, but parks, I don't know how they're zoned. So can you speak to that, Commissioner King?
Yeah, yes, like a scenario like you described, Council Member, if you have a park where there's an adjacent public right-of-way that's part of a commercial district, that would be eligible for this food truck program. It wouldn't be in the park, but it would be near the park in a commercial district. If there was, if we had that scenario, then that would be eligible for the food truck program.
Okay. All right. So then we will have to define where those areas are too. So that's what's important is now for us to get to mapping out where these areas are across the city and making sure that the community residents and everybody are in support of these locations. That's the only thing that I see about this program and this process that I think we need to work on a little bit more. But other than that, I got it. That's good. Well, does anybody else have any other comments?
Yes, I'm not sure if anyone can hear me. I think I was unmuted. My name is Destry Carasquillo from Rio's Italian Ice and the Food Truck Association of Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Going back to the program that they're trying to put in place. The program is actually designed for the health department, APD, and business and licensing to be able to view which trucks are where and which trucks are legal. So I know everyone was a little confused about trying to get clarity as to how we find the trucks and how do we regulate the trucks. This program that they're trying to put in place, and I know they have several different designers that they're considering using, but once this program is in place, Galen Baxter and everyone from the City of Atlanta Health Department would be able to look at that program and see which trucks are where. APD would be able to look into that app and see which trucks are where. The business license department would see which trucks are where. It's not something that would be closed off to anyone. It's ideally an app that everyone would be able to look at and see which trucks are where. And in order for each truck to be permitted in that location, each food truck, and I know I heard everyone asking earlier, how do you find out what truck is legal and not legal? Every truck in Atlanta that operates in the city of Atlanta is supposed to have a city business license. It's supposed to have a health department permit from the health department. And each vendor in the city of Atlanta has to go through a vetting process through APD where they have the background check and they're fingerprinted. And each one of those vendors are supposed to have, it's actually an ID. After you get fingerprinted and the background check done, they take a picture and your photo was on that ID. Now, the owner of the truck doesn't necessarily have to be on the truck, but that truck would be permitted in the city of Atlanta. And that's the way you can identify a truck, whether it's legal or not. The trucks that are legal, like myself, I've been licensed here in Atlanta for over 8 years, but we don't have anywhere to vend. So we're looking for places to try to vend without paying ridiculous fees to event promoters. We're not looking to do anything illegal. We're looking to do things legal. And we just need help. We're fighting for our lives. We've been fighting for our lives for years. We've been working with Galen Baxter. We've been working with zoning and planning. And me specifically, I've gone up to the city council probably over the last 3 years to speak several different times on the same topic. Jim has been great working with everyone. You know, he's been phenomenal. The Food Truck Coalition has been great. Our group as well is another great group that just helps to advocate, and we're trying to just work with everyone to try to make everything as easy as possible. The Food Truck Association of Georgia is willing to work and help in. We have about 60 food trucks in our group. Like, the Street Food Coalition also does training to teach different trucks how to operate correctly. We do as well. Any way that we can help in any shape, form, or fashion, we're willing. If anyone has any questions, I'm available at any time. The same way everyone is available. Anything that we can help with on our side, we're willing to help with.
All right. And you're Destry, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I see your name. Thank you. Again, Destry, I just want you to know I am not trying to, I want us to move this program forward. I just want to make sure that we got all our I's dotted and our T's crossed in terms of structure and accountability. So I'm not opposed to this program. I hear you, and I absolutely support what you're doing. Matter of fact, when I find out where you are, I'm going to come find you this summer, okay?
Yeah, and this is Carla Smith again. This is exactly what I was talking about, is if, like, we had your number, or, like, when Joyce and I get these calls, it's usually like a Saturday afternoon. We're at home doing our laundry, and there's some wildness going on at a vacant lot or something somewhere. So if we had this, like we were talking about the app or whatever, or even your number, because I bet if you weren't busy, or you could send somebody over and maybe meet us there, and then, you know, everybody could help, and you could go, hey man, I'm a food truck vendor and I'm legal and I can show you how to become legal, but you can't be doing this right here today.
So I think we're all on the same page, guys. We're going to hold this for a minute. I'm going to get with Mr. King and Mr. Humphreys and some folks, all of y'all. I may ask y'all to have just a little one-on-one session with me on the side, just to have some conversation about this. And we have to have the law department too, just to make sure we get some clarity on some stuff and maybe do some changes to the legislation just a little bit to see if we can have more accountability. Other than that, I'm ready for it to go. Okay?
All right, I still want to get a list of everybody that's on this call today, though.
Ms. Lindo, do you have all that information in terms of the interactions with them, the emails and all of that?
Yes, Madam Chair, and I'll provide that too.
You'll provide that to us. I appreciate everyone that's working on this and trying to help.
I do too. I'm looking forward to working with y'all. I'm not opposed to this at all.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you all. If there's nothing else we have before us,
can I adjourn?
That's Collins' favorite. Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, that's my favorite one. Thank you for meeting all.
Thank y'all, everybody. Thank y'all, everybody, for being here. We appreciate you.